Andrea Waltz, welcome back to the show.
I am so glad to be back.
Yeah, this is fun. You and I were just connected prior to getting to your story and the idea of no and negativity and rebounding and rejection. I had interviewed you on my other podcast years ago, and it was pre-pandemic, and so much has changed. I know in my life, in the world, I'm assuming in your life. So it's cool to have you back on the show and reconnect here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So your book, I couldn't tell you how I was first introduced to your book, but I was, and then I got it and I read it and it was awesome. And since I've been in the book, it's called your first book is called Go for No. And since that time, I was just telling you in what I'm doing, speaking to students, writing books, creating student podcasts, I jokingly said, but it's kind of true. I've been told no or rejected 10 zillion times in the last 5 years. It's just a part of life, especially when you try to do something. So maybe if you could, in any order, introduce yourself, introduce what you do, and then why you write about and talk about no and rejection, why you think it's important.
Yeah, well, I'm fascinated with the whole idea of rejection. And by the way, I wish somebody had come along when I was like maybe in eighth or ninth grade and said, hey, rejection is normal. Don't give up just because you were told no. There were many times I can think of one club that I applied to and I got rejected. And so my attitude was, okay, well, just I'm never going to try out for another club again. Just forget it. I remember getting rejected off. I didn't get on the dance team. And I was like, well, I'm never going to go out for the dance team again. And I just had the complete wrong mindset around rejection and how rejection is part of life and part of the process. And that when those things happen, it doesn't mean that you should never try it again. You need to try it again or go out for something else or work on your skills and try to get better. But nobody was there telling me that. So it's one reason why I think this message is so appropriate no matter what your age is, but even adults find themselves in situations selling life, whatever, where they have to face no. But so let me back up and say that I got a Bachelor of Science in criminal justice, and I ended up not getting a job in that field. I met my business partner and husband, Richard. He told me this go for no philosophy. And I was blown away because I realized that and again, this goes back to kind of how I grew up and how I was raised, and nobody ever taught this to me. He taught me the idea that in order to achieve your goals, in order to achieve your dreams, if you want to hear more yeses in your life, you need to be willing to hear no. You're going to hear no. It's a fact of life. And not only are you going to hear it, but really you should go after it. You should seek it, because when you are going after those things and when you are putting yourself in a position to hear no, that's when amazing things can happen. And so we wrote the book actually 25 years ago now. It's a short fable. It's only 80 pages. It's about a guy who's an average salesperson. He wakes up in a strange house. It's a very beautiful house. He wakes up, he's walking around, he's like, what's the deal? Where am I? And he discovers somehow magically that he is in a house that belongs to a 10-year in the future, wildly successful version of him. And he ends up connecting with this future version of himself. And together they try to figure out what it was that the future him did in order to get this beautiful house and have these great things and have this and be living this amazing life. And as it turned out, the secret was he was willing to fail, that he was willing to hear no.
Yeah. So as you're talking, I'm thinking how, your book, I feel like most of your work is geared toward sales, is geared toward the corporate world, et cetera. But as you're talking about rejection and fear of failure and trying out for something, it happens to kids. It happens to you. It happens to me. It happens to nearly everybody. And the idea of go for no, that it sounds counterintuitive, which means it sounds wrong. It sounds backwards. It sounds like it doesn't make any sense, because if I'm a kid, if I'm an eighth grade or 10th grade or applying for college, And you're saying go for no. I'm thinking, no, I'm not going to go for no because it's embarrassing. It makes me feel dumb. It makes me feel like a loser, especially if I'm in public and people see me get told no. That's even worse. Rejection. It just makes you feel terrible. So why does it make sense? You kind of explained it indirectly, but why does it make sense? Why does going for no eventually equal yes, or eventually equal happiness? Yeah.
Of it is it is a counterintuitive, as you said, philosophy based on the idea of polar opposites. I mean, you can't have light without dark. You can't have success without failure. You can't have joy without sorrow. There would be no way to measure it. But here's the thing: it's we all have been taught and trained as a society to do everything within our power to avoid rejection and avoid failure and care about what people think. And actually, it's biologically wired into us. So it's a very natural human thing. Everybody has this as an issue. Eventually, some people kind of move past it, but everybody starts out with this issue. And so when you take that as kind of the foundation that you're born and raised and you grow up trying to avoid rejection. And so what you do is instead of when you see a yes or you see success, you want to do everything within your power to go towards that. But simultaneously, you're also trying to avoid rejection. And the thing is, because they are polar opposites, and yet they are really opposite sides of the same coin. They are inextricably linked. You can't have one without the other. So if you want to go after success in the yeses, you have to move through failure. You have to move through success. Every doctor will screw up on a patient. Every actor will lose out on a ton of auditions. Everyone is going to fail and mess up and at some point in the process of going after success.
Yeah. I think of it a couple simple ways for a kid to remember it. And I haven't heard, I didn't hear the things I'm about to say until much later in life. I don't know, within 5 years. But the idea is you got to crack an egg to make an omelet. So, or you can't make an omelet without cracking eggs. If you want an omelet, right, you have to break an egg. You have to break an egg. You have to ruin something. You have to be told no. You have to be rejected in order to make an omelet that is delicious. I also think of the idea of babies. You know, when you're a baby and you, first of all, you can't crawl, you scoot, and then you crawl, and then you stand, and then you walk, and then you run. It's a gradual process. And I always, actually, I don't know if it's true or not, but I'll explain this to kids or wrestlers, whomever I'm coaching, that, you know, your butt is soft and squishy because you fall on it all the time. That's like, that's failing. That's being told no, that's not succeeding. And it really is just part of the process. And to go back a little bit deeper, the idea of having this internal aversion to loss or rejection, it evolutionarily, as people, we have a loss aversion, because if you did things that got you killed way back, you wouldn't survive. And our primary driver is survival as people. So it's internal, it's instinctual, but we have to fight against it, you know, in order to move forward in life, in order to, I think, kind of at the end of the day, what I'm coming to is happiness. Like, we're talking goals and dreams, but at the end of the day, it's happiness and fulfillment.
Exactly. And so the big question then that is always hanging out for people is, okay, that all makes sense. How do I do that? Right? What's the actual how? What are the steps? And I think the big thing is that as as a society and people like us are doing work to, I think, further this mission, is to demystify, to desensitize, to take away the stigma of failure and to talk about it. And often I have been asked, told, suggested that, hey, maybe don't use the word failure, like maybe call it a challenge or a setback or whatever. And that I actually don't even agree with, because I don't want the word failure to have power over us. And when we can't, we all know when we can't use certain words, It's they start to take on a life of their own and they have a power over us. And so it's no, it's it just because you fail, just because you experience a failure, even if you experience a lot of failures, doesn't mean that you as a person are a failure. In fact, it means actually just the opposite. When you look at the successes in art, in science, you always find people that have failed a lot. You only hear the stories of their success. And so I think what we need to do as a society is demystify this whole and get rid of this stigma of failure. So that's the one thing. And then the second thing is we've got to start celebrating failure. I mean, we got to take it to the next level. So it's one thing to kind of not make it shameful and embarrassing anymore, but people need to be rewarded. Salespeople, we always encourage reward the salesperson who gets a lot of no's, because if a salesperson who gets a lot of no's is going to eventually get a lot of yeses because they're going to practice, they're going to figure out what doesn't work, they're going to improve. Anybody who tries out for a lot of stuff, I mean, you never hear of an actor going out on one audition or a dancer going trying out for like one dance thing, right? They go out on hundreds. And my advice is always you've got to celebrate the failures along the way so that you change how you think about them. And that's really the secret of how to develop resilience and to keep going.
Yeah, and if you think, as you were talking, mentioning trying and mentioning actors, and in my brain I'm thinking athletes too, but a lot of students will relate to Mr. Beast on YouTube, or they'll relate to the Paul brothers. All of these people that we see the finished product, what you just said, you see the finished product, but you don't see the very first YouTube videos, or you don't see the very first songs or singing or time on stage. Jewel, who's a very popular singer, talks about being 5 years old and yodeling on stage. That's she is where she is now because of that. And to say celebrate a no, right, as an athlete, I never want to lose. Like, I don't want to lose and then say, yes, I lost. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is you having the confidence, you listener right now, having the confidence to set a goal or work towards something and try, and then fail, and then get back up and try again. Because every single time, and maybe you can speak to this from a sales perspective, a lot of middle schoolers and high schoolers aren't salesmen and saleswomen, and that they don't care about it. It's boring. It's whatever. However, speak to this maybe in relation to sales. Every time you make a cold call, or every time you ask for business and you're told no, then you take a step back and you think, okay, what did I say? What did they say? What made me nervous? And then you learn, and then you do it again. And that's eventually what leads to success.
Well, yeah, and this is, I mean, the classic example of kids are the best salespeople, and there's a few reasons why. It's funny. I actually just wrote a post about this just the other day. Kids are the best salespeople because, especially young kids who maybe haven't gotten to the point where they start becoming super aware that there's other people around, that they're being watched, and so what happens is when you start getting into the upper grades, you start freaking out because you know that you believe that everybody is watching you with these, super close eyes, and that actually isn't even true either, but whatever. So kids are such great salespeople because they don't really care what other people think. They have no fear of no. They're always thinking about the ultimate objective, and and they have a do whatever it takes kind of mindset. But from a go for no standpoint, just think of the average Girl Scout selling Girl Scout cookies, whether they're in front of the grocery store or they're just knocking on doors. And the strategy is a total go for no strategy. All it is you tell your story to as many people as you can, as fast as you can. In this case, their story is, "Hi, I'm a Girl Scout. We have delicious cookies. Do you want some? Yes or no?" And people are going to say yes, they're going to say no. And the perfect way to handle the no is to just detach from it. In other words, it doesn't mean I'm a failure. Yes, it was a failed sale, but it doesn't mean I'm a failure as a Girl Scout selling cookies. But you take the no and then you move on and you ask the next person and the next person. And you celebrate the no's along the way because that's the activity. So you got to celebrate the failures as much as the success. Um, And it is the perfect go for no mindset, because not only is it a matter of kind of detaching, just getting into action, but it's in many ways, it's a numbers game. I mean, it doesn't mean that the people that you're talking to are just numbers and you don't care about them, especially in sales. We're all about building relationships and all of that kind of stuff. But um, having that speed and being able to go quickly from one no to just, okay, let me try the next thing. Let me ask the next person, because just because this person is a no, the next person may be a yes. And so I love the analogy, the idea of Girl Scouts selling cookies, because they're total go for no all day long.
Yeah. And again, to reiterate, for a young person, we're with your best effort, with the right attitude, with the hard work, pursuing what you want, and just understanding that no is going to be part of that. A perfect example of this: when I was wrestling and fighting, my mindset was I'm winning 100% of the time. There was no, it was, if I didn't win 100% of the time, I was upset. I didn't, right? But I would win 99% of the time or 80% of the time. And then when I started a business, it was the opposite. It was nearly the exact opposite. Whereas I might win 100 matches and lose 5 matches, I was lucky if out of 100 calls, 5 people even talked to me. Not that they said yes to me, but that they even talked to me. When I talk to schools, so students would know that I speak in schools and do assembly programs. If I'm in your school, there are, I'm going to say 100, but it's probably more like 300 or 500 that have said no. They either don't respond to my phone call, don't respond to my email, outright say no. So I had to adjust my thinking to not take it personally, to not feel like a big loser, but to understand, oh, this is part of the deal. And if you succeed 1 out of 100 times, if you want to succeed 10 times, well, you've got to try 1,000 times. You just have to measure that failure rate and keep doing it over and over and over.
Love that. And you reminded me of something too when you were talking about wrestling, how you would go in wanting to win. And I think that's a really important distinction here that people understand is go for no is not a philosophy where we're saying go do something and don't do your best, right? Like just go in and it is what it is. And no, you want to whatever it is that you're attempting, you can have that winner's mindset and that attitude. You should. I always say, how you can have yes, you can go for no and have yes energy. And by that I mean think yes, like think positive, think like, hey, this is going to work out great, and I'm going to give my best presentation. I'm going to smile. I'm going to do everything that I can do. I'm going to rely on all the training that I've had. Uh, I'm going to go in with a positive mindset. So that is not about accepting, excuse me, that's not about expecting that you're going to fail. You don't have to expect to fail. You don't have to expect to hear no, but you do have to accept it when it happens, because that's just a part of life. And the more that you can have that acceptance when it happens, then you can start learning from it and go like, okay, well, let me think about this. Did I rely on my training? Did I have a blind spot? What maybe do I need to practice on? What do I need to work on? How do I get better? I didn't, I did my best, but I can do better. And then you go into it the next time and you try again instead of giving up. And so there's a real important distinction between expecting that you're going to fail and expecting that you're going to hear no, and accepting it as part of the process and then trying again.
Yeah. And as we kind of start to wrap up here, just thinking about how students can apply this to their lives. I am interacting in schools and with students all the time. So I have several examples off the top of my head, but if you, in addition, have any examples, I'd love to hear them. But you mentioned trying out for a club. Maybe it's raising your hand in class. These are all things that we're afraid of, or we don't want to look silly or dumb or embarrassed. Raising your hand, trying out for a club, taking a shot in a basketball game. My daughter she's 10, she's playing basketball, and whenever she gets the ball, it's like she automatically gives it away because she's not comfortable yet. Like dribble, maybe take a shot, maybe not, because there's a pressure. I don't want to mess up. I don't want us to get rid of the ball. So it takes time. asking if you can sit at a table, walking up to a new person saying, hey, my name's Charlie, what's your name? I play basketball too. Like, there's all these instances where we don't try because we're afraid of rejection.
Yeah.
And I don't know how hip to middle school and high school life you are, but if you have any other examples from your personal experience in the past where a kid could use this philosophy, I'd love to hear it.
So, no, definitely not. I do not have children in this age group. So, so no. And my husband's grandchildren are homeschooled, so they're not even part of the system. But I will say this: I think that everything that you listed is what we call a go for no moment. And so having the awareness as a kid, and this is like high level stuff. I mean, this is, when you want to ask for something. I mean, we all do it. And we think to ourselves, "Ooh, I want that. I want to ask for it." Or I want to know that person. I want to ask if I could sit next to them. Or I want to raise my hand. I want to see if I can win this thing and answer the question. And then what we do, because we're afraid of that rejection, is immediately talk ourselves out of it. Don't do it. You're just going to make a fool out of yourself. And it's in those moments where it takes really a lot of personal courage to just go for it and say, I would rather fail and try than to go home and not knowing. And this is a practice that needs to be supported by teachers and coaches and parents. Thank goodness somebody like yourself is out there helping the movement, because that's having kids execute on their go for no moments throughout their day is the way that they're going to grow up to be a really well functioning adult who uh, is operating at a high level in facing rejection.
Yeah, you mentioned, I'll wrap it up here, but you mentioned this really high level stuff. Why I do this show, why I want to have people on this show like you, is because of exactly what you said. You wish someone would have said this to you when you were a kid. I wish I knew this stuff now when I was a kid, because it would have helped me so much in my life. So you're right. It is very advanced, high level stuff. But at the same time, you, listener, are capable of listening, learning, and practicing. And I think maybe a good ending takeaway is for a student to think to themselves, okay, this is a go for no moment. Boom, put your hand up. This is a go for no moment. Hey, what's your name? I'm new here. I was wondering, like, think in your brain a little mantra, a little saying, this is a go for no moment. Ready, go. And then go for it.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, that's all it is. And you know, if you think about, if you've ever seen oh my God, why am I actually blacking out on this? Oh, if you've ever seen The Wizard of Oz, right? You know Dorothy, you know the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the lion. Well, the funny thing about the lion is the lion was looking for courage. That's what he wanted to get from the wizard. And when they finally got to the wizard through all the trials and tribulations, and the lion is all excited and he's like, okay, give me my courage. And he was terrified the whole time. The whole time they're on the trip going through the forest and everything, trying to get to the wizard in Emerald City. He was terrified. And the wizard just said, you've had courage all along. You don't need anybody to give it to you. So that's the great thing is everybody has courage inside them. It doesn't need to be bestowed upon you by anybody. So just you can take action. That's all you need to do.
Absolutely. Andrea, thank you very much for being here. Her book is Go for No. It's geared toward grown-ups, but I read it and thoroughly enjoyed it. And students, if you enjoyed this, you would enjoy that book as well. So thank you, Andrea, very much for being here.
Thanks, Charlie.